Victorian England was a vastly different landscape from the modern-day equivalent today. Poverty was a harsh reality for many, and the caste system only served to exacerbate their situation. A considerable lack of forensic science and sensationalized headlines from the newspapers of the day only served to sow fear and discord among the population, especially when notorious serial killer Jack the Ripper was at large. This, however, was not the only Jack that was making London a terrible, terrible place to live. For there was another, many years before him. Join me as I open the cryptid case files on Spring Hill Jack. First sighted in 1837, Spring Hill Jack would go on to begin his reign of terror that would last for decades, with the last contemporary sighting of him being in 1888 and a few modern sightings between the 1970s and 2012. Often being described as a tall man dressed in a tight-fitting oilskin suit, draped in a tattered and worn flowing cloak, many accounts have also mentioned his devil-like face, his gentlemanly appearance, and his ability to vomit forth blue and white flames from his mouth. But one thing all accounts have in common is his uncanny ability to leap extraordinary distances. Our first sighting was in October of 1837. A young girl named Mary Stevens was making her way to Laverdale through Clapham Junction, where she was assailed by a cloaked figure. He first leapt at her, gripping her firmly, and then proceeded to assault her and tear at her, ripping her clothes off. As she screamed in terror, the figure made his escape, and despite best efforts, no trace was ever found. The next day, Spring Hill Jack was seen in Mary's neighbourhood. It is said that he jumped before a coach, causing the coachman to lose control. Spring Hill Jack then let out a terrifying laugh as he leapt the 9-foot-high wall to his escape. As traumatic as this was though, this was only the beginning, as in February of 1938, Jack was back, and this time he assaulted 2 more young women. During this time, the press took to naming him Spring Hill Jack. The first of these victims was a young girl named Jane Alsop. In the eve of the 19th of February, Jane was at her father's residence, where a knock on the door and a voice claiming to be a police officer asked her to bring him a candle, as he'd claimed that he'd apprehended Spring Hill Jack. Being a diligent and courteous citizen, Jane obliged, bringing a lit candle to the police officer. Upon opening the door, Jane saw a cloaked figure waiting for her. Handing over the candle, the figure then tore his cloak aside, revealing a most hideous and frightful appearance. With piercing and fiery eyes, the figure then proceeded to vomit forth fire into Jane's face, whilst also tearing at her gown and inflicting several scratches to the arms and neck with metallic claws. Luckily for Jane, her sister appeared and Jack quickly fled the scene. Fast forward 9 days and Jack strikes again, this time menacing the then 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister, both of whom were returning home after visiting their brother, a butcher who resided in the respectable part of Limehouse. Whilst giving a statement to the police, Lucy stated that her and her sister were walking past Green Dragon Alley, where they noticed a figure in the corner of the alley. Walking in front of her sister, Lucy came within close distance to the cloaked figure, who, in Lucy's words, spurted forth a quantity of blue flames. The flames, causing Lucy to be bereft of vision, slumped to the ground in fits of hysteria. The state of panic lasted for some hours. In addition to her sister's deposition, their brother confirmed that he had heard worrying screams a short time after his sisters had left his property. Racing to the scene, he found Lucy in a state of mania on the floor. He helped her up and guided his sisters back to his property, where he learned about what happened and the terror that befell his sisters. His other sister described the assailant as being a tall, thin man of gentlemanly appearance covered in a large cloak and carrying a small lamp similar to those used by the police. He did not speak or make any attempt to harm them, but simply walked away in a brisk fashion. The police were quick to investigate these attacks and others using all available resources. Many of these suspects were apprehended but ultimately released. Following more sightings of lesser significance, Jack made his notable and most audacious appearance yet. It was a warm August night in 1877. A soldier on guard duty at his barracks in North Camp in Aldershot. As he peered into the darkness on the very cusp of his vision, he could make out the shape of a figure, seemingly bounding down the road towards him. Obviously concerned by what he saw, the soldier then issued a warning to the figure, which went ignored. As he prepared to issue another warning, the figure mysteriously disappeared, only to reappear right next to him, slapping him multiple times in the face. Retaliating by opening fire, the figure was shot multiple times to no avail. The shot fired seemingly left the figure uninjured. However, there is some speculation that the shots fired were either warning shots or blanks as opposed to being lethal force. Regardless of what rounds were used, it had the desired effect as the figure disappeared into the darkness. In his memoir 40 Years On, Lord Ernest Hamilton mentions the Aldershot incident, stating that similar incidents happened to his regiment when barracked at Colchester, and that the panic was so severe that the soldiers were issued with ammunition and ordered to shoot the night terror on sight. This, however, proved unnecessary as sightings quickly stopped shortly after. From claims of a supernatural beginning to theories involving mass hysteria, Spring Hill Jack's case is rife with all kinds of speculation. What's more is if we take a look at the prolonged period of his activities, the paranormal abilities attributed to him, and the lack of concrete evidence has garnered all kinds of theories and tales related to him. But what do you think? Is Spring Hill Jack a supernatural entity such as a ghost, or perhaps he's simply a Victorian prankster of many copycats since? Or given his appearance and his uncanny ability to vomit forth flames, could it be the personification of evil himself, Satan? Who knows? Again, your speculation and theories are welcomed in the comments below. Stay curious and join me next time as I open another cryptid case file.